Our top focus story on the broadcast is Chinese withdrawal from friction points in Ladakh. So India Today was the first channel to get you satellite images of Chinese withdrawal at Galwan or Petrol Point 14. Now there are reports that the Chinese are withdrawing from Petrol Point 15 and 17 Alpha, which is Hot Springs and Gogra Post area. There is some thinning out in the Pangong Tso area around Finger 4, but it's just thinning out. The Chinese aren't withdrawing just as yet. The question remains, is this tactical? Are the Chinese serious? Can India trust China? Abhishek Bhalla with our top story tonight.
On Tuesday, we showed you the first satellite images of China's pullback from Ladakh's Galwan flashpoint. Satellite images that captured the first baby steps that will hopefully lead to a bigger disengagement between troops on both sides. And today, another big update from the Ladakh front lines. The first steps of the disengagement have also been completed at Patrol Point 15 in the Hot Springs sector. This is one area where both sides have mobilized in the most aggressive manner since May this year, making this first disengagement step very crucial. This is an area where the Chinese army had visibly deployed tank regiments and positioned multiple pieces of artillery pointed directly at the Indian positions. India has done the same, of course, but thankfully no hostilities have broken out here in over 2 months of standoff.
Just like the Galwan Valley, a buffer zone has been created in the Hot Springs area around Patrol Point 15 to make sure troops from both sides stay far away from each other. The Indian Army will resume its usual patrolling once the on-ground verification is done and a complete pullback takes place. In the meanwhile, the Chinese continue with a high mobilization in the depth areas.
China's aggressive movements in this sector, including multiple camps just 3 to 4 kilometers from the line of actual control, had been one of the biggest indicators of hostile intent. While India Today will not show you India's deployments here, suffice it to say that Chinese positions have remained vulnerable to Indian action too, and that perhaps is precisely what has kept the peace. A new buffer zone created between troops will be temporary, after which verifications will take place and Indian patrolling will continue. With the first baby steps of disengagement taken at Galwan and one of the Hot Springs flashpoints now, a substantive pullback from the third flashpoint near the Gogra post and the crucial Pangong Tso finger complex is awaited. With Manjeet Negi and Abhishek Bhalla in Ladakh, Bureau Report, India Today.
Editor Defense Abhishek Bhalla joins me for more on the story. Also with us on the broadcast is Ambassador Ashok Kant, who is the Director of Institute of Chinese Studies, also former Indian Ambassador to China. But Abhishek, to you first, what more are you picking up specifically about Finger 4 to Finger 8 at Pangong Tso?
Gaurav, what I heard today was that there was some reduction as far as troop mobilization is concerned at Finger 4 from the Chinese side. What's also visible is that they have removed some of their structures. But what sources tell me is that, this does not mean by any chance that any kind of de-escalation is taking place at Finger 4, because while there might be some thinning of troops, some of their vehicles have moved back in the Finger area, but the big mobilization still continues, and the mirror deployment on the Indian side is similar, and as a result of that, the troops are extremely close to each other, unlike what's happened in Galwan and also in Hot Springs now, where some disengagement has taken place, ensuring that the troops are not in proximity. What I've also heard is that by tomorrow, a similar kind of disengagement where a pullback by 2 kilometers is expected in the Gogra area. We'll have to wait and watch how things pan out. Sources say as of now the phased manner of de-escalation is on course, but Pangong Tso remains a very, very challenging task.
Okay. Ambassador, you've read the Indian statement, you've read the Chinese statement. Chinese statement is less than polite, seems to indicate something very different from what we seem to believe. So are we to think that the Chinese may have come forward a couple of kilometers, maybe 5. They go back 3 and yet retain 2, imposing a new LAC?
Well, Gaurav, as Abhishek pointed out, some initial steps have been taken, but much more remains to be done. From media reports, what we know is that in Galwan River Valley, there has been some disengagement. Troops of both sides have pulled back to some distance. Something similar has happened at Hot Spring, and you just mentioned that something similar might happen at Gogra tomorrow. Let's see what happens at Pangong Lake, northern bank of Pangong Lake, which is perhaps the most difficult around. Chinese are well entrenched and they have created a number of additional facilities. Let's see if they're willing to pull back and dismantle those facilities. But that will be just the beginning of a process that must include many other things. One, there must be restoration of status quo ante as it existed in April this year before Chinese intrusion started, and standoff situations were created at multiple locations in the western sector of India-China border areas. 2, we have to ensure that Indian troops are able to resume their patrolling unhindered as they were doing until April this year. The concept of buffer zone that you referred to, that should be a temporary expedient.
Yes.
But if that becomes a long-term measure, then we'll be losing territory in terms of a land LAC. That should not happen. 3, I think equally important, there must be de-escalation.
That's a very important point.
As you know, there has been build-up of troops by the Chinese side, and we had to take corresponding measures on our side. That situation is dangerous. We need to bring down troop levels as soon as possible. So these steps need to be taken.
Oh,
it should be done in a phased manner, as our NSA and the Chinese State Councillor have agreed. But it should be done within a finite time period. It should not be an open-ended process. And as you rightly pointed out, it should not result in a situation.
In fact, that was the question I was coming to.
2 steps and withdraw only 1 step, because that will lead to change in status quo.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, when you read the statements that have been issued by the Ministry of External Affairs in India and the Chinese Foreign Office, ours is a very polite, a very responsible statement, which gives out, steps that India and China intend to take. The Chinese sound rather belligerent. It's almost as if the message is being lost in translation. Does this indicate 2 things? 1, this buffer zone would mean that we are not patrolling our own territory, and that is why our government must clarify that after this tension goes down in a finite time frame, as we say, we will once again patrol till, patrol point 14, 15, 17 Alpha, and of course up north 11, 12, 13 in Depsang and in Chumar and all those other areas. All of that government must clarify, and this should happen in a time-bound manner, Ambassador.
Gaurav, there are 2 elements in the Chinese statement issued by the Foreign Office day before yesterday, which caused concern on our side. 1, they're saying that the right and wrong of what happened in Galwan River Valley on 15 June are very clear. So they are reiterating their position, their own narrative on the developments that evening, very unfortunate development. 2, they're saying that they firmly reaffirm the sovereignty in these areas. That doesn't quite give us comfort that when it comes to these multiple pockets where Chinese intrusion has taken place, they will be prepared to restore the status quo ante, whether it's Galwan River Valley or Hot Spring or Gogra or northern bank of Pangong Lake, or also Depsang Plains. Let's talk about Depsang Plains also, because apparently Chinese have disturbed the status quo in that area as well. It's a very wide frontage we are talking about. If they insist on their sovereignty in these areas, delinked from the line of actual control, I think we are in for more difficult period.
Oh, absolutely, and we should be prepared for it. We should not be desperate to de-escalate at this stage, because we cannot permit the Chinese to unilaterally change status quo at the line of actual control. 840 kilometers from the Karakoram ranges down to Chumar, and if the Chinese create a buffer zone, then we are denied our own territory. But Ambassador, stay with me. We'll talk about this in greater detail. For the moment, I want to shift focus to the other big story, and that is local Ladakhi lads, snow warriors being prepared to take on the adversaries or at least defend our land from this Chinese salami slicing. Kiki so-so lehar gelo, which means victory to the gods is their war cry. And India Today's Abhishek Bhalla reports from the Ladakh Scouts Regimental Center in Leh, where the next batch of snow warriors are being prepared.
These young Ladakhi boys in their teens might look gentle and harmless, but they're trained to be ferocious warriors. They're the next generation of the Ladakh Scouts, ready to take on the Chinese threat. These sons of the soil, popularly called snow warriors, are all set to be part of the Indian Army amidst the current India-China standoff in Ladakh. By September, they'll be inducted into the army and will be deployed in forward areas. Over the next 1 year, another 400 will be joining the Ladakh Scouts Infantry Regiment. At the regimental centre in Leh, the young recruits ready themselves for their future challenges that lie ahead. In a real-time battle scenario, they accomplish a task of taking over an enemy bunker on a hill, climbing the rugged mountains under the harsh, glaring sun.
This is exactly how things happen during a battle. The army always trains its young recruits for conventional warfare, and in wake of the current situation at the line of actual control, these kind of drills and training exercises are extremely important. This gives a clear idea of how treacherous this mountainous terrain is. It's extremely hostile, and that's what makes these young men very, very crucial, because they are well acquainted with this terrain and they can fight in this hostile terrain because they are the sons of the soil.
While firing has not been the norm at the line of actual control, that doesn't mean they don't prepare for the worst. With the army now altering the rules of engagement of not opening fire, these young men practice their firing skills as well.
These young men are called sons of the soil and are well aware of the treacherous mountainous terrain of Ladakh. Polite but gentle, these are also ferocious warriors who can take on the enemy in high altitude areas, and as of now many of them are in forward areas at the line of actual control amid the ongoing tussle between the Indian and the Chinese armies.
They are tough soldiers, and along with their warrior skills, they also understand the terrain, and they are the eyes and the ears of the army as they truly understand the ground realities. In June, 127 youth had completed their training and joined the Ladakh Scouts. Officials say the number of those applying are much more than the regiment requires. The Ladakh Scouts played a stellar role during the Kargil conflict in 1999 as the troops understood the finer nuances of high mountain warfare. The current circumstances at the line of actual control are similar, where they may face Chinese aggression at heights of more than 14,000 feet. With Abhishek Bhalla in Leh, Ladakh. Bureau Report, India Today.
The Chinese aggression remains a cause for grave concern. And Ambassador, in this scenario, is it time for India to contemplate perhaps tougher, more concrete steps? Is it time for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to press the pause and reset button on our ties with China?
Well, Gaurav, it's time definitely to review our relations with China, because what has happened in recent months, especially what happened on 15 June, gives cause for rethinking on our part. I would not like to use terms like reset lightly, but clearly government is under pressure to undertake a broad-ranging review of our relations with China. The policy of constructive engagement that we have pursued with China over the last 3 decades has run into heavy weather. More needs to be done to counter China, to redefine our relations with China from a position of strength, to create more deterrence vis-a-vis China, to enhance our capability, reduce the capability gap which has opened up between two countries. A whole lot of things need to be done.
Yes. In a calibrated manner, in a systematic manner, but it needs to be done. Ambassador, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. One thing is clear, you must know the nature of the beast. You must know the real face of the adversary, and this report that's painstakingly been put together through open source intelligence and satellite imagery shows the real face of China. Nazi concentration camp, kind of concentration camps against Uyghur Muslims, where 1 million people, 10 million people are in those concentration camps, the Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang area. Take a look.
The Holocaust. The repression of Soviet Russia.
Ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren
Adolf Hitler built concentration camps to exterminate the Jews.
im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt ein...
Joseph Stalin imprisoned millions in his notorious gulags. The malicious influence of last century's darkest episodes lives on in modern-day China. Under the watch of President Xi Jinping, Beijing has created a sprawling network of internment camps across its far western region of Xinjiang. This to tame the region's ethnic Uyghur Muslim minorities. India Today's analysis of at least 50 satellite images offers a rare insight into China's oppression. The fortification is high-tech, but no less enslaving than Stalin's Gulag system.
This province has been subject to an unprecedented campaign of internment, sending between 1 and 2 million adults into internment camps in order to indoctrinate them. My research uncovered significant additional evidence based on government documents, notably family planning budgets, family planning reports, policy documents, government data and statistics from government websites on very different administrative levels. This evidence points towards a systematic policy and campaign of subjecting Muslim minorities who have too many children to internment camps, punishing them with internment, punishing them draconically with all kinds of other consequences, subjecting at least 80% of women of reproductive age to long-term effective birth control surgery, which typically consists of either placing intrauterine contraceptive devices or sterilization.
More than 1 million Chinese Uyghur Muslims have been imprisoned in these camps. Behind these bulwarked walls, they are forced to sing praises of the communist regime and forced to forsake their religion. Our scrutiny of satellite images reveals these Chinese gulags. They are gated with massive walls. External sentry posts, double-layered wire grills, as high as 15 feet. Housed in this single-storied barracks with red roofs are forced labor camps for Muslim inmates. Images from the construction phase show presence of PLA vehicles around. The projects were carried out under the direct supervision of the Chinese military. The modular design cut short the construction time to within 2 months.
The larger game plan is that the region of Xinjiang is geopolitically strategic, has always been, bordering 8 countries in Central Asia, from Pakistan to Central Asian countries to Russia to Mongolia. This most recent sterilization campaign can be understood as an effort to subjugate the Uyghurs, to bring them under control, to assert control over a population that has been growing faster, harder to track down, and harder to control culturally and spiritually. And the most recent policies are also, I believe, a strategy, unfortunately, of ethno-racial domination.
But China's crackdown on Islam is much wider. Muhammad, Islam, Imam, Saddam, Hajj, Mecca, Medina. For Muslim parents, picking a wrong name for their babies in Xinjiang, especially with religious overtones, could land them and their children in trouble. And if that wasn't enough, the communist regime ordered removal of minarets and domes from the mosques, in what's been an assault on traditional Islamic architecture in the country. The US administration has termed China's treatments of Uyghur Muslims the stain of the century. And the stain must be wiped out from the civilized world. Bureau Report, India Today.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.